Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome to another episode. We've made it to February. What a stretch of the season. I have a hot take, Cody. I now think the most important stretch of the NBA season takes place from the end of December into the All-Star break. Have I said that before?
You said it to me. Definitely, you haven't said it live to like the world.
Okay.
Before.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate?
Well, I was realizing recently that this is kind of my favorite part of the year. And then I was checking notes and sort of things that have happened in the past, going all the way back to like 2022. And I noticed a lot of great critical things happening in December and January games, folders and notes from January and December and even early February. And then 2024, I had more. Last year, I had a ton. This year, it's starting to pick up. And I'm realizing like this is the part of the season in today's NBA where teams are maturing and you're kind of starting to get to see what the product looks like when it's put together. It's very hard to do that after the All-Star break in any meaningful way anymore. Early in the season, yes, there's a lot of excitement and it's fun, but stuff hasn't really sorted itself out. If you're the Charlotte Hornets, you haven't really got your flow going yet. You haven't figured out everyone's role. The young players, the rotation hasn't been quite as established. And the last thing is, we used to think of this as like the dog days, and it is hard sometimes if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder to kind of make your way through January because you want to play until June. But for the rest of the league, highly competitive games where you are still playing or ramping up your intensity because you figured out your role. So when I watch a team like Charlotte, it's like not only are they getting healthy and things are clicking and the young players are figuring it out, but the offensive system's coming together. As a coach, you can probably put in a little bit more. And then even though the Hornets aren't great defensively, they're bringing a ton of intensity to their games because they're finally at a place where they're probably going, hey, we now have an identity. We know who we are as a team. So this is just a pattern for me in this decade of tuning into these games kind of around Christmas and that period right through the All-Star break. Of course, the All-Star break's now like a week off, and it feels long after the All-Star break. It feels very long. But this stretch, this like 6 to 8 week stretch, I feel like there's a ton of valuable stuff happening in games.
I wonder if it feels like the last real push that you get before some of the top teams maybe take their foot off the gas just a little bit before the playoffs. You see teams definitely start going, we're going to use the T word. They maybe tank a little bit more. Although we've seen a little bit of that going on. There are some great tanking matchups as of late. I can't remember the actual games because I don't actually want to spend any of my brain power on them. But it makes sense because at the beginning of the years, teams are like trying to implement some new stuff. They're like, hey, let's see if this guy's going to work. But now, like you said, we're getting here. Teams should have their offensive system down. Teams should have their defensive systems down. Teams should know, like, start whittling down and figuring out who is actually going to be on the playoff team. And I think you're absolutely right. It's almost like a mid-playoff or mid-season playoffs tryouts at this point for all of these teams going into it. So I think that's a pretty good theory before the doldrums of like March and especially late March. I always find that's probably my least favorite time of the year to watch basketball.
Yeah, I think that's a change. It used to be considered the opposite. You used to kind of get this stuck in this grimy winter middle period in January and late December and February, and then things felt a little more exciting toward the end of the year. But as we've talked about, you don't know the lineup. You don't know who's going to play on a March 28th game anymore. You don't know what's coming. Half the G League might be coming up, and you use the T word, but you could use the D word too. It's the development. They used to call it the Development League, didn't they? They've changed the name of the G League before. Anyway,
yeah, it was the D League for a period of time.
The D League, yeah.
Was it? Did they change it to G because they thought it was like derogatory to be like Development League, or was it like a Gatorade alignment of sponsorship? You could tell me either one right now, and I would believe like 100% what you just said.
Hey, don't go throwing out brands on the podcast that haven't sponsored us. Come on, it's just free advertising.
Sorry,
no one's going to drink this. Yeah. This electrolyte beverage, no one's going to drink it before you mention that.
The flavored electrolyte beverage that maybe started in Florida for the Gators once upon a time. That's exactly the G drink I'm talking about.
What a marketing story that is, by the way. All right, we have a question that I wanted to get to from last week from Badfinger. I wonder if he's a Bond villain. Badfinger.
I was just about to say that.
Asked us, he says, he says, I'm very confused about the Murray versus Maxi. I guess technically could be more than he or she. I shouldn't say that. Badfinger. whoever Badfinger is, very confused about the Murray versus Maxi shooter comparison from the last episode. They're essentially identical shooters by raw percentage. Maxi has a barely better true shooting percentage. Is there a particular type of shooting you had in mind? So I wanted to address this because I guess we glossed over it pretty quickly. When we look at shooting types, Cody, I'm looking at where your shots come from. So different levels on the court, the variety of those shots, and then contested versus uncontested nature of those shots. And when we break down shot making into those different categories, we look at something like the camera tracking, how close the nearest defender is, and things of this nature. Jamal Murray ranks always near the top of whatever category you want to use. So one thing you'll hear us reference on this show is wide open 3-point shooting over the last 3 seasons so we can get a larger sample. And Maxi, to me, has made a jump as a shooter. We don't know quite where that jump lands, but Murray, if you look at his wide open shooting in the last 3 seasons, he's in the 90-something percentile, always. If you look at his pull-up shooting, again, variety of shots, he's very, very high. If you look at his expected value field goal percentage over the types of shots he takes from the mid-range, near the basket, or from 3, he's always at the top of the league. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about shot making or shooting skills amongst players like that versus 40 games into the season, they have the same true shooting percentage. Your true shooting percentage going to be heavily influenced by things like free throws and, as always, your teammates on the court and the system that you're in.
So Tyrese Maxey is interesting because if you go back a couple of years, in the 22 season, the 23 season, he shoots 43% from 3 and then 43% from 3, right? Although, however, his attempts per 100 possessions are down a little bit. So in 2022, it's about 6 3-point attempts per 100, shooting 43%, up to 9 3-point attempts per 100. Again, about 43%, but then he's dipped the last 3 seasons, right? He's at 37% in 24. He's at 33, just about 34% in 25. And then this season up to 39%. So in terms of what you're talking about and the variety of 3-pointers and the variety of shots that a player makes, do you think that that percentage dip that we're seeing from Maxi is because he's having to take a lot more different kinds of threes? Or is it that he kind of was on a 2-season heater and he hasn't been able to quite recapture that low 40 percentage from 3 that he had?
I see it as the heater, as just more variability. And then you mentioned volume. That's the other huge part of the equation. Sometimes someone looks up a stat and they say like, hey, this guy's shooting 40% and this other guy's shooting 40%. They're the same thing. But it's like, no, one takes 10 threes a game and the other takes 2. Mm-hmm. And that today is maybe even a bigger differentiator in terms of how you're guarded or the actual shot quality that you possess in your arsenal than shooting percentages. So the volume, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, you have it in front of you. Maxi this year has a volume uptick, which to me is reflecting this growth in the diversity of his shooting. And we'll see how the percentages scale up with that volume, basically.
Yeah, these last 3 seasons are the only ones where he's actually above 10 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, and that's where it's dropped below 40%. I always feel like I calculated it recently because I was kind of interested. I think league average 3-point attempts per 100 for this season. Let's see if I can do that really quickly here where I pulled up. Yeah, it was just a shade above 7 3-point attempts per 100 possessions is league average, right? And so you compare that to like a couple decades ago, like 20 years ago, it's like around 3. So the average has more than doubled 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. And so when you're talking about volume, I always like to see if a player is taking over 10 per 100 possessions. Not, if you look at some of the top end players, like LaMelo Ball is going to be like 15, 16. Steph Curry is going to be up there as well. Some of these great shooters, the best shooters in the league, will be in the teens. But if you can cross that 10 threshold with a solid percentage, to me, that's when you start actually being a high volume, high percentage 3-point shooter.
I do want to talk about the Hornets in a second. But before that, I want to give you your choice. Would you like me to correct Reddit from this month recently? Or would you like to discuss some of the takeaways from the Cade Cunningham video? Would you like to, well, actually all the video series we've been doing on these deep single game dives about decision making and all these little nuances that are taking place on the court. Would you like me to correct Reddit or discuss the Cade video?
Okay, so I'm going to take option 3 for a second.
This is just called choose your own podcast.
This is so you referenced Badfinger earlier. And it just got in my head. I'm like, why is that so familiar? I know there's a connection to the NBA. So I was thinking about it. I finally found what I'm looking for. Badfinger, the band, has this banger from the 70s called Day After Day, right? Fired Up. It's a wonderful little ditty. It's a great song. Ditty, like I'm from the 1950s. But anyway, why is that relevant? Because there was an NBA commercial where Amazing happens, probably right around 2008, 2009, and they used that song in the background for Boston fans learning that Kevin Garnett was just traded to the Celtics. It's this very emotional thing. And that's just seared into my mind, is hearing that song and associating it with the NBA and the Kevin Garnett trade. So I just had to get that off my chest because I was thinking Badfinger for the last 3 minutes while we were talking here.
Okay.
You don't need to comment on that at all. So can you tell me why Reddit is wrong?
Yeah, well, yes. Well, they're wrong a lot. I mean, we've talked about this over the years, and it's hard to want to go in and constantly, you open up the app and then say like, oh, that really needs to be corrected. But we have tried to keep tabs of these like huge pieces of misinformation. And this one that I'm about to get to levels up the style of misinformation. So I'm just raising, I'm just going to be the only person in the world concerned about this and raising a red flag, because we're like a year away from just completely fake videos about players. I'm just going to have AI fake videos about players. And that's all people are going to talk about on the wasteland that is the internet. So we've talked about Jaren Jackson's block gate and not understanding those stats, and the scandal around Michael Jordan's steals, and there's all sorts of things. The latest one, Cody, that was just crazy, that leveled up. It was just crazy. There's a video on LeBron James flopping where the person who edited the video edited out all the places he was fouled or hit in the face that led to him having a reaction of holding his face and falling over. And I was like, we're getting real close. We're getting close to just completely faking the videos. Like just to be clear, this person went in, knew there were fouls, and then took the fouls, tried to edit the video in a way that made it look like you couldn't see that there were fouls. And it's bad.
What's tough about the internet is that when people are like trying to be dishonest, like that is their like reason d'etre when they're out there, it just makes it so much more complicated. Because the thing about somebody like LeBron, you go back like a decade, I think this was mostly in the Miami days. I don't know if I remember it mostly in the Cleveland days, but do you remember when in all earnestness, people called him LaFlop for a period of time?
That's what this video was about. And it was a confusing thing to me, because there are many floppers in NBA history, and we don't have to have an impromptu top 8 floppers of all time led by the OG Vlade Divac, and we don't have to get into it, right? But like, there's real players that you think of flopping, and then there's also like LaFlop, and I'm like, I don't know. There was a time in New York one time. Do you remember that game in New York? I think it was like a Saturday national TV game where he got hit in the back and had like a delayed spasm on the sideline. That's the only time I can think of like a strange flagging something strange about.
I will say when it comes to LeBron is he's probably the leader in the clubhouse for he's taken a break on the ground. Like throughout his career, there's just been a lot of times where he's taken a hit, he's down on the ground, he's really showing it up, like, oh my God, I'm injured, this is going to be crazy, this is terrible. He just takes a couple extra breaths there, and it probably had to do with him playing over 40 minutes a game for at least 1 year in his career. But I always flagged that sort of thing when he did it. He also always had the superpower of turning his ankle and then just retying his shoe and just like, reprogramming the fact that's like, hey, ankle, you're not supposed to give up just yet, and then he just comes back and keeps playing. So yeah, that's kind of a field of what you're saying here. But unfortunately it does. Oh, are you pulling it up right now?
If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to run the actual fouls that you can see. These were all cut out. So Dylan Brooks is hitting LeBron in the face. What was shown is after LeBron got hit in the face. Jason Tatum elbows LeBron in the chin. What was shown is they cut out that arm and elbow, and they just show LeBron falling to the court, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing even to correct. It's just absurd behavior.
Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. The internet is a place I don't necessarily like to hang out too much unless
you chose wrong today, Cody. You should have chosen the other door. You should have chosen the other door instead of this topic. The what was the other option? The ramifications, the takeaways of the Cade Cunningham video. Do you have any thoughts on the ramifications?
Well,
because I have. Yes, go ahead.
I'm actually interested in what you mean. What do you mean the ramifications of it? Like, are you getting particular blowback from it? I love that you still just have this LeBron video playing.
Sorry, I think this is the last play. Sorry,
we're actually just gonna watch LeBron highlights while we record for the rest of the time.
I know you would like that. You would love it if we just watched LeBron highlights for the entire podcast. But no, we have to get back on track. No, all I meant was if you had any sort of philosophical thoughts or things of that. Now, I have a few. I had a question. I had a topic I wanted to bring up based on it.
Well, I think what's really cool about Cade specifically in the fact, because the conceit of the video for anyone that didn't see is that here's Cade playing a supposedly bad game. Like percentage-wise, he didn't shoot a great number. He didn't put up great stats. The box score wasn't incredible, anything like that. But he impacted the game in a lot of ways that didn't hit the box score, in a lot of ways that you wouldn't know just by watching highlights, right? A lot of really subtle things, some kick-ahead passes, some really quick passing, but also on the defensive end, like using his size and strength to shut down driving angles and great rotations in the paint. And, he's not a hands guy. Like, he's not one of these guys we're going to bring up and think he's for the end of the year for strong hands, but he has a sturdy 6'8". It's 6. I don't even know if he's that big, but he's a big, sturdy build. Yeah. Okay. So he's right around there, can guard a lot of different positions. And you just wouldn't see any of that if like I just said, you watch the highlights or look at the box score. And I think what's particularly cool about Cade doing that is when you have a star player impacting the game in a lot of those different kinds of ways, it just boosts their overall value more than some of these other star players that aren't doing those kinds of things. So I think the ramifications for us, at least when we start, ramping up and starting to think about our top 10 list for the end of the year, it's interesting to think about how he might end up in a conversation like that. And if that sort of extracurricular stuff he's doing in the game is going to boost him enough to be a legitimate candidate.
I'm excited for you to debut your top 10 players at the end of the year while I sit and watch. No, you nailed it, because I think that the question for me on my mind lately is how valuable are these sort of beyond the box score plays? How valuable? We've talked about little thing kings and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, even just a crazy valuable single play that does show up in the box score. What is the difference between a play technically credited as a steal because somebody fumbles the ball and it happens to fall at your feet? You didn't really do anything. You just were there. The ball was lost, unforced turnover, and it fell at your feet. You picked it up. You got credited with the steal, versus a steal from behind, a Derek White chase down in transition to take away a sure 2 points that almost no one else in the league would make. And I'm not saying that particular game we studied for Cade had a ton of those plays, but there were some plays where you're just like, oh, okay, that was a wow play. That was an elite play. He had the block on Jordan Walsh coming over to protect the rim. If you remember the play I'm talking about, where just like first they call it a foul, you review it, it is a perfect block. You're a wing in that position, or in that case, kind of like the point guard for your team in that position, rotating off early, sniffing it out. Jordan Walsh is not a poor athlete. He's gone up and done some stuff on people this year, and Cade met him at the apex and blocked it. How valuable are these kinds of plays that basically, relative to the average player, most players wouldn't make? That's my question. And that's been in my mind for a long time, going back to Larry Bird throwing these outlet passes off of made baskets, where you're just like, but Cade had a similar thing in the game where there was a make, and he realized before the ball went in the basket that Jalen Durham was cross-matched with Anthony Simons. And so he's getting the ball out of the basket. Kind of reminded me a lot of Jason Kidd, Cody. A lot of similarities. I think Kidd's a better defender, but really good defender, pushing the pace, understanding mismatch, playing a cerebral game, not maybe the greatest scoring numbers, great playmaking and passing. And it's like a play like that, where how many other players in the world are realizing as the ball's up in the air, there's a mismatch right here. Jokic does this, Luka does this, LeBron James does this. It's a very, very high level play. And not only does it something like that not even show up, because on that play there was just a foul, right? He's throwing it down court and there was a foul even before a shot, and I don't think they were in the bonus. But fans don't even notice that stuff is happening when they're watching the game. And to me, these are the value drivers that great players are adding to their game, Well, weaker players, and we've discussed them before, and we've put some of them under a microscope. I don't want to call anyone out, but when you're bleeding value in those spots, like forgetting what play your team ran, right? You're going in the other direction. So my question is like, how much is the totality of that actually moving the needle in a game where we spend a lot of time talking about, his bag or his points, points per game? Show it to me. That's my question.
So when you say, you bring up Luka, because I have a pass in my mind right now. I think I sent it to you and the other Thinking Basketball people, but it was this kick ahead pass where there was such a sliver of space that he was able to hit LeBron's ceiling off. I don't know if it was a defensive rebound. I don't know if it was after a made basket, but LeBron comes up, he seals a bit. Luka is like 70 feet from the basket, and he throws this entry pass from like 70 feet away, and LeBron just like catches it perfectly and goes up for a layup and finishes it. In any other player, there's like 1, 2, 3 players in the league that could make that pass, right? And so Luka making that pass in that instance created from nothing a high percentage, basically 100% 2-point shot, right? And so I think the value of a lot of these plays, and you can look at all of these, and if Gertrude Stein was alive right now, she might write a steal is a steal sort of thing, but I don't know if that's the case. But you can do that for any of the stats. You can do it for a rebound, you can do a steal, you can do points, you can do blocks, things like that. But I think the point is, especially with like an assist or a block or something like that, is the creation or the erasure of a really high percent of shot out of nothing, right? And so I think if you think about it mathematically, right, you take just like a traditional, normal, average, what do I want to say, possession, and turning it into something that is like, wiping away the shot for the other team or giving your team a really high percentage shot. So you could calculate it that way and see how many times a player makes that kind of play. But to me, that's the value of those kinds of plays, is the creation of something out of nothing.
Right. But I think what's interesting is the handful of times that happens in a game, we might be able to say like, oh, wow, what was going to happen if this player didn't make this amazing play was going to be worth 1.2 points on average or something. And then the player came along and made it worth, 1.9 points. We can do that calculation. But the interesting thing to me, Cody, is all of the smaller ones. And this is what happened in the Cade video, just adding over and over and over and over again. It's the Kyle Lowry concept of just constantly doing little things. And like, if you take that player off the floor now, you just completely remove him from the game. He's not communicating to his teammates. He's not cutting and spacing and moving into these situations. He's not setting impromptu screens on a pin in at the last second to get a player who may not have an open shot, all of a sudden a wide open shot, things that just never register. But those are the really interesting areas because it's not once or twice a game. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that are like 10 or 20 times a game, and each of them has a little bit of value. And you just go, all right, yeah, at the end of the day, is this like literally more important than making 2 extra field goals on your shots or 3 extra field goals? Or in the game we did, the reason why I wanted to do it is Cade was 4 for 17 in the game, but he just had his fingerprints all over the entire basketball game. And it's like, at the end of the day, think of it as a playoff game. How many times has a playoff game been used to denigrate a player and you go, he's 4 for 17, he's 2 for 13, whatever. And what do you want? You want him to be 8 for 17? Let's say he's 8 for 17, but he doesn't make any of the other plays we put in the video. None of them. He's a negative in all other areas. I would not only say that the game that was 4 for 17 with all the small plays was better, I would say it was way better. And that's the space I'm kind of thinking about these days in terms of the disconnect of player value and how we talk about players and the things I'm interested in. And then we do, what do you say, a top 10 player ranking or something? And then, all it is just a deluge of complaints about how stupid we are. And it's like, we're not watching highlights and the box score. We're watching all this other stuff.
And you talked about Cade
here. We may still be stupid, by the way. I mean, Cody's not, but
okay.
I think
this is the thing about basketball. It's rabbit holes followed by rabbit holes, and you keep going down them, and you just realize that trying to calculate the whole thing is just it's an endless chase, basically, Ben. It's basically impossible to try and nail down a singular value onto a specific guy and what he's bringing to the table, right? So you talk about Cade, obviously, he had a lot of those kinds of plays, but I'm thinking about his teammate, Asar Thompson, right now. And the amount of plays I see for the other team where, yeah, he has the spectacular defensive plays. He's meeting people at the rim, right? He's flying around and disrupting passes. But the amount of times where he's just like, he's at the nail, a player's trying to drive in, They're like, nope, I'm not even going to try because Asar's there. They kick it to the opposite wing, and then Asar Thompson just like teleports over there and stops any kind of action. And you're like, that, if that was any other player, if that was an average player at the nail playing there, maybe the player tries to sneak through, maybe he's able to kick out and it's a wide open three. And the weird thing about basketball is the counterfactual is the guy that Thompson is still defending could take a ridiculously contested three and make it, right? And then you wouldn't even realize that, like, wow, he made a tremendous play here, but it didn't matter because just the outcome of the play ended up with 3 points. So when you think about that, I don't even know how to add up all of those plays versus a, like I said, average player that sure might make a play like that once in a while, but isn't scaring players away from making those kinds of plays. So yeah, it's difficult to try and do that. And I think when you evaluate a guy, you just have to realize like a couple of times they do it, and then you start zooming in and being like, all right, is this a consistent thing that this player is doing? Are teams reacting to them in this kind of way? And then you're just in the deepest of rabbit holes trying to figure out exactly how much value that brings to the team.
Asar Thompson is so good at defense that he has successfully tricked the box score model. We use our box plus minus for Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. He has tricked the model into thinking he's the best player in the NBA in the last month. Because as we've talked about before, Nikola Jokic has been the king of this test for the entire decade of the 2020s, basically. And we know because of his injury, he's going to be off the board. And yes, Shea is second. Shea, I was told Shea's not good at basketball anymore. He's averaging 34 points per 75 on true shooting percentage, 9% above the league. And the Thunder, Cody, the Thunder have really struggled. They're only outscoring teams by 9 points per 100 when Shea plays this month, which is a little tongue-in-cheek because it's not like 99th percentile anymore, and we're used to them being in the 99th percentile, but that's the version of Oklahoma City struggling, outscoring teams by 9 points per 100 possessions. And yet Asar Thompson has successfully tricked this model. Cade Cunningham third, by the way, in the last month. Those teams obviously playing very, very well. Detroit plus 14 per 100 with Cade Cunningham and Asar Thompson on the court in the last month. And you know who's even better?
Who's that?
The Charlotte Hornets.
But first of all, I want to take a really quick detour to Shea for a second to kind of close up the point of what we're saying here. Because when you talk about these subtle skills, right, you can talk about like, I think in the video we talked about Cade as a nose for the ball, right? Like he's really good at just beelining for it and picking up some of these errant bounces or something like that. And you can focus on those things and try and figure out the value of it. But somebody like Shea, you can just look directly at his offensive game. And his step back is pure. It's incredible. He gets to the basket at will and things like that. I'm trying to think of what offensive player. I think this might have been in the LaMelo video where you're like, hey, he's getting to the free throw line or so, and then you like to see him make one more dribbling move to try and get to the basket. And Shea is the king, is simply the king of stringing together these dribbling moves. And I think just trying to analyze ball handling and be like, oh, this is so flashy. Like, oh, Kyrie Irving's the best ball handler in history. Allen Iverson's the best ball handler in history. But if you think about the problem solving of somebody like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, he's got to be in any conversation you have about the best ball handlers in history because he's just unsolvable. And you just throw defenders at him, and they just have to keep throwing defenders at him because he's just kind of zigzagging wherever he wants. So you see the end result of him either kicking it to Chet in the corner for a three or hitting his step back, but you miss the fact that he's just like a fish that you're trying to grab with your hands. You're like, oh, I'm going to get some trout tonight. I'm going to go barehanded. And then all of a sudden he's hitting a midi right over your face. So there's like subtleties to even the big box score stuff that happens.
All right, should we talk some Charlotte Hornets, or would you like to go? This is just a completely off the cuff. You get to decide everywhere we go today on the podcast. Would you like to discuss the Hornets next or some other topic?
We were just talking about free will in class today, so I'm feeling it right now.
That's an illusion. Don't worry. Did you tell the kids that it's an illusion?
Well, I used it in terms of Odysseus because we're reading the Odyssey, of course, because they have to be prepared for the summer.
For the Christopher Nolan movie?
Nolan movie.
That's your pedagogical approach right now. Prepare them for the Christopher Nolan movie. Yes.
I showed the trailer, which means I've seen it like 10 more times since we last talked. And I'm like, this is what you all need to be prepared for.
Do you just have it on loop in class?
Yeah, I'll have teachers just pop in and be like, I heard the soundtrack again. Is it playing? Like, yep. So you're teaching it in this one? Nope. They just need to know. So yeah, with my choice being guided by my own Athena over here, let's talk about the Hornets a little bit.
All right, finally. Yes. I mentioned some of those other teams were having like effective months with their best players on the court. The Charlotte Hornets, I will let you decide. I will let you answer, Cody, the quiz of the day. In the last month, what is the Charlotte Hornets net rating with LaMelo Ball on the court? What is the Charlotte Hornets net rating with one LaMelo LaFrance Ball?
I think, man, I know the number's absurd when Miller and Knipple are on the court together. I don't want to go too high because I don't want to spoil your fun. I'm going to say plus 12.
The answer is plus 24. They are outscoring teams by 24 points per 100 in the last month. And interestingly, they're actually being outscored when LaMelo goes to the bench. Very interesting. So he and Miller and Knipple have just been fantastic. I think Moussa Diabete has been fantastic. We could talk about him. But the Hornets, if we take it out, I think it's their last 17 games we're talking about here, and we look at their last 17 games, they are 12-5. They have a plus 11 net rating overall as a team. They have a 121 offensive rating, which is about 6 points better than most teams in that stretch. And I alluded to it earlier. They have a 109 defensive rating, which is about 6 points better than teams in that stretch. I think Moussa's been a big part of that. I think the activity's been a big part of that. Brandon Miller getting healthy and coming back. Yeah. Have we successfully converted you on the fact that Charlotte is kind of an interesting team and fairly good?
Okay, yeah, they've definitely been very interesting. And there's some players that are kind of emerging now that are quite fun, Moussa being one of them. But I think he's actually quite relevant to the conversation we were having earlier, because here's a guy that's playing high 20s, low 30 minutes per game. Like, he's out there at the starting lineup. I know that lineup that he's involved with is quite successful. But we're talking about the box score, Ben. Against the Pelicans, played 28 minutes. He had 2 points and 9 rebounds, right? Against the Spurs, 12 points, 10 rebounds. That's okay. Game before that, 10 points, 5 rebounds. He had a huge game against Memphis, 18 points and 19 rebounds, right? 12 points, 5 rebounds.
So overall, number. Yeah.
Here's my question for you, because I know people are talking about Moussa Diabate and just how tremendous he's been for the Hornets, and people are super excited about him. But his numbers are like Ben Wallace type of stuff. So, what's going on out here that gets you so excited about Diabate with the Hornets?
The defense, the activity on defense, the speed, the length, the strength, the reads. I mean, we might have it in one of our smartest plays videos that we do with the NBA. He had a sequence in a game the other day, Cody, where he read both sides of a lob play. I don't remember if it was back-to-back or in the same quarter, meaning the first time he's defending this lob and pick and roll, he attacked the ball handler and like swatted the pass out of the air as the ball handler threw it. He's like, I know you're going to throw a lob. And the ball handler turns the corner, goes to throw the lob, and Moussa is like, I can see the future. You're going to throw a lob. And also, I'm kind of an insane athlete, so I'm going to jump 10 feet in the air and steal your pass. The next time down, he stays with the roller and steals the lob. He's like, I'm going to tag the roller this time and stay on his hip. Lob pass to the rim. I'll go get it before everyone because I'm Moussa Diabate. So when I see stuff like that defensively, and your call out with the box score is perfect, I scoff at the box score. I say, what is he averaging? 9 points and 6 rebounds. It doesn't really capture the activity or the defense or the kind of plays or possible rim protection or even his ability to finish as a role man within this offensive system, because he's not necessarily going to put up 20 points a game in that role when they have all these other guards. And these other guards are really doing interesting stuff offensively that reminds me of teams borrowing from Indiana and the Pacers last year, where you've got Knipple, LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, and they always have this fallback option of playing with each other with these ghost screens where you pass it and chase it, and then you decide, are you going to set a screen, or am I going to slip and not set the screen and pop out for 3, and they can all shoot like crazy. So we've talked about this over the years. It's like fundamental question in basketball. What happens when your first action is taken away? What's your second action when your first action is taken away? And for a long time in the 2000s, your fallback option was like isolation. Do I have a good isolation scorer? Can I give it to Kobe or Carmelo at the elbow with 9 seconds left on the shot clock once our play call didn't really work? And then we realized over time that actually, if we reset to pick and roll, that's probably a lot better, right? Mm-hmm. And now a team like Charlotte is resetting into these 2-man guard-to-guard actions, going left to right horizontally across the 3-point arc. And it's pretty effective. That's all I'm going to say. And they've got 3 great shooters, and they're really doing a lot of fun stuff there. Coach Charles Lee deserves a lot of credit for turning the ship. And I think at this point, just the question is like, how good are they? Because they're obviously a playoff level team.
So I think what's interesting is you talk about the 3 main offensive guys, and even the line of Tricon Sexton comes in. Like, that's not a guy who's shy of shooting, right? So you have tons of offensive talent with guys that want to fire it away, and obviously should. But I'm talking specifically about Miller, Knipple, and LaMelo. Like, these are the guys when you're on the court that should probably be taking your shots. Somebody like Diabete shouldn't be stretching it out and like taking all these shots. Like, you can reset and do something interesting with them. So we talk a lot about how do you eke out as much value as possible when you're put into a specific context. And if you have the context with those 3 guys on the court, what kind of a person do you want? Do you want an isolation scorer, or do you want someone that's just going to be a hard-nosed, dirty work defender that's going to tirelessly screen? And that's the thing that actually jumped out to me the most about Diabate's game is I don't necessarily think it's a disinterest in trying to shoot, but he gets the ball so many times. He'll be like 8 feet from the basket, and he'll just be like, no, this isn't for me. Immediately turn for somebody, pitch it out, and sprint. And I'm talking dead sprint into a screen. Sets the screen, flies somewhere else to set a screen. He is just everywhere with the screening action, and he's totally okay with doing it. Like, it's not the same because Tyson Chandler had so much more roll gravity. He was such a vertical threat in his prime. But he reminds me of the way he plays like Tyson Chandler, who just completely understands what his role is on the court when he's surrounded by that kind of talent. And when you are surrounded by that kind of talent, like, sure, you put him on a really bad team. Is he going to move the needle that much for you? No, he's probably not. But when you have a ton of offensive talent, he's going to push you higher than some of these other traditional players that someone might say is quote unquote better than him. So I've just been incredibly impressed with his embracing of the role. You know, against Wembanyama, I got to say, caveat, I don't think Wemby looks particularly physically him as of late.
No,
but
he doesn't.
Diabete did a tremendous job of being like, you are not going to be in the paint at any point in this game when I'm on the court. I'm pushing you everywhere. I'm hounding you. He picked up Steph Castle at one point. There's like a semi-transition play. Steph Castle has the ball. They're near midcourt, and he's like, I guess I'll pick you up and stay with you the entire time and block your layup at the rim. Just incredible stuff that this guy is doing. So yeah, those 3 offensive guys are amazing, but you need the Tyson Chandlers. You need the Diabates if you're going to be as successful as you want to be when you have offensive talent like that.
I really like the Ben Wallace connection you made earlier because he's a little bit smaller. You know, Tyson Chandler was maybe like 7'1" or whatever, but Moussa's 6'9", 6'10", and really impressive agility for his length and the way he moves. He's also part of the last thing, which I think is interesting with Charlotte, which is the rebounding. I think they're 4th now in the league in offensive rebounding. He is way up the board in offensive rebounding percentages. Just these little things that you're talking about that complement shooters or other roles on the team. They also crash really, really well from the corners. And they're an interesting team in that they have gone from this classic place. The Spurs were in the exact same place where 2 years ago, you look at the roster and you're trying to figure out how many of these guys are NBA players. You know, the Nets have this going right now. The Nets have 5 first-round draft picks, and you're just tuning into the game and you're like, all right, how many of the players on the team are legitimately going to be part of a good team in a couple of years? And you fast forward 2 years, and now you go and you like look at the bench, and you're like, yeah, Colin Sexton, he's an NBA player. He's been around for a while. He's coming off the bench. Grant Williams is coming off the bench. Josh Green is coming off the bench. Like, this is a team. This is like a legitimate team with good basketball players, and they're sort of one of the better teams in the East right now. I don't think they can compete at the top of the conference quite yet. It's a little early, but they're a good team, and the defense complementing some of this shooting and offense that we're seeing, and these other guys filling in, Brian Kalkbrenner and Diabate, and yeah, it's good stuff.
You know who I'm going to bring up that I was also pretty impressed with when I watched some Hornet stuff. He hasn't played much of the season yet, but he's an old friend of ours, Ben. He's an old friend.
Yes, I know who you're going to bring up.
Yeah. Yes. Grant Williams still does Grant Williams things. He still does Grant Williams things. And again, in the Spurs game, I just top ahead right now. It's the most recent game that I watched. Really on top of those backline rotations he has, just a buttoned up, strong defender who's you want to talk about guys that are just like built like a house Like, you're just not going to move that guy. So it doesn't matter that he doesn't necessarily have like vertical rim protection. But if you have someone going into the basket or making a cut or something, his size is his girth in the paint, Ben, is just going to prevent basically anything from happening. And then overall, this is another, I don't know if he's a little thing king. Maybe he's a little thing prince. He's at least a little thing like, I don't know, something. He's somewhere in the castle right now that we can talk about, but he just makes right passes. The shooting percentage isn't where we want it to be, but I think he does enough little things, and defensively he's stout enough that he's only going to make the depth of this already deep team that much better.
He's somewhere in the castle. I like that, Cody. That's very good. So I will give you the last podcasting choose your own adventure of the day. I think we need to round out and revisit our conversation and finish our conversation about best offensive players in the league. We've been talking about it from the perspective of different fits and how you fit with different teammates and team building. And this is really what we're getting after, right? So we can finish that conversation. I have a few more thoughts to round out and reflect on our discussion, or we can go in a different direction. You choose. Would you like to turn to page 49 or page 63?
Oh, this is so exciting. Well, my final thought about the Hornets is
there's more Hornets. I'm sorry. I didn't know you had more
one more take. This is one more thing I got to say. Sion James got to do a Men's Health cover story or something at some point. I mean, this guy is unbelievable. Like, I need to see a video. I want to see what kinds of workouts he does because he does not seem like an NBA player I want to be in front of when he drives to the basket, because that is a mound of muscle that moves around with the ball. So I had to shout that out. So here's the thing about the options you just gave me. I know the outcome of one of them. I know the conversation, but I have no idea what option number 2 is. So I kind of
option number 2 was whatever you wanted to go down. Yeah. I don't know. I have other things that I can get to, but I was really more thinking if you had any other topics that, were interested to you, the stuff you're watching around the league or things of that nature.
Man. No, let's talk some offense for a little bit. I think we can continue that conversation.
Okay, because I think you had some follow-up. You had some reflective thoughts that now that we've had the first couple parts of this conversation and it's brewed in your mind, to summarize, first we talked about players who were sort of these on-ball situations where they're driving the offense. I was very much thinking about it as them driving the offense without other key offensive players. So they're going to run a lot of pick and roll. They're going to run a lot of isolation, whatever it may be. And the last week we talked about pairing with another star player, another key offensive player, depending on the types of player that they were paired with. We talked about pairing with another ball dominant pick and roll player. We talked about pairing with, an elbow hub offensive player or something like that. We went through some thought experiments, and as we did that, I think there were some winners and losers in terms of spotting the diversity of kind of teammates that you would fit well with, the skill sets that fit well with those teammates. And this week, we never really got to it. This week, I think the last big pairing in my mind that we would talk about would be, how do you pair with another offensive big, right? If you're a good big man offensive player, does it make sense to pair with another offensive big, or is there a redundancy there that doesn't really make sense in today's game? And if you're a wing or a guard, do you pair well with every kind of offensive big? Do you pair well with only elbow hubs, or do you need a pick and roll partner, a pick and pop partner? Do you need a big that can also ball handle and initiate offense at the elbow? Does he need to space and shoot? That's the last element sort of this conversation for me, at least reflecting on the ground we've covered so far.
Definitely. So something you said last time, I was kind of thinking about it because I think it might have been a bit of a throwaway line. And I've been thinking about the construction of how teams are playing offense right now. So you see, like, Miami's changed a little bit, but Miami ran tons of isolations. And I feel like you're seeing a lot of isolations. You even watch the Hornets, going back to them for a second, where, they have their sort of little DHO screening types of actions. Someone has the ball, they get in the middle, they kick, things like that. But all of that works because somebody can break somebody down off the dribble. And so maybe it's not as aesthetically pleasing as we like. Maybe we want to see a better version, or like a prettier version of basketball, I want to say. But do you think that we, and maybe this is just a me problem, are underrating the value of having two strong isolation scorers on the court together. Because in this process, I was like, man, maybe in the NBA right now, it wouldn't be so bad to have like a your turn, my turn sort of offense. Even though it's not what I want to watch for basketball, maybe it's actually better than I'm giving it credit.
I said this last week.
Yeah,
I don't remember how much I elaborated on it last week, but my takeaway and my sense, Cody, is that there are some situations where if you take two great players like that, you might not get 2 + 2 to equal 4, but 2 + 2 might equal 3.5. And if 2 is a bigger value, if you're talking about great players, that's a pretty good foundation. You know, we think back to the classic 21st century example of this is LeBron and Wade teaming up. And, you know, they were still pretty good. It's like, yes, the LeBron offense by itself reached a certain height in Cleveland, and the Miami offense with Wade reached a certain height. And when you put them together, you did not get the sum total of that because there's only one ball. But heck, they didn't really have much else on that team, and they were still very good. And I think that same kind of idea applies to a certain degree to what you're suggesting. If the players have skills that they can play off each other, because you mentioned Charlotte, and man, if you can ball handle and shoot on the move, now think about how easy it is to not only play off the other guard. We talked about this a little last week. If you have those skills where you can get to the second side or be a alternative initiator in the pick and roll, or play isolation, or literally replace one when the other goes to the bench, the Chris Paul, James Harden, Mike D'Antoni Rockets concept. Yeah, I think you're getting a lot of value. And if your players are good enough, then I still think you want best player in that situation, depending on who the players are, versus just like, hey, it would be really cool if you had like a role partner that you could throw lobs to. But offensively, I think you're going to get a ton of juice when the players are really good.
And I think, you know, that's a trap that I fell into this more probably a few years ago, like 2018 or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, I'd rather have Danny Green in this lineup instead of say like James Harden offensively or something like that. We're not talking about defense. Where it's like, okay, sure, Danny Green's offense is additive in the sense he's not going to take anything away from everyone else, but like whatever he brings, a 0.5 boost or something like that. If it's additive, that might go up to 0.75 or something like that. But Harden being so much better offensively, even if you take away 3/4 of his effectiveness, he's still going to have more juice than somebody like Danny Green. So I think that's something that I was sort of wrapping my brain around thinking about a little bit. It's like maybe I need to be a little bit more excited about some guys that excel at isolation scoring.
Isn't that the classic 2014 Spurs where it's like, would you replace Danny Green with James Harden, or even back then, like LeBron? What it completely restructures the team. And I think sometimes the trap can be, well, you might be able to find players like that make the team a little bit better overall, but that doesn't mean you're going to get, as we've seen so many times in basketball history, you can't just add a great player to a 65 win team and expect them to win 75 games, because the things that get them to 65 wins may have to be removed when you add that great player. So in the Harden for Green example, even if you're the beautiful game Spurs and you somehow found a way to get a little bit better on offense with Harden next to, you know, Splitter and Duncan and Diaw and Kawhi and Bellinelli, et cetera, you're going to lose something back on defense almost guaranteed, as you mentioned. So it's not trivial once you take into account both sides of the ball. But I mean, right now, I do think, I think there's a lot of situations based on the style of offense we're seeing where if you can get two guards or two wings that fit reasonably because they have second side skills, because they can shoot really well, then I do think you're going to get a little bit more synergy than the equivalent of the old days of being like Allen Iverson and Carmelo, go take turns.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually a really great connection point, because you just never saw quite the synergy for there. And I don't know if that's an era thing, and maybe the era now is a little bit better because some of these offensive players are more dynamic in the way that they run their isolations. There's just more to it. Because I was thinking a lot how we brought them up, but Kawhi, Jaylen Brown, guys like this haven't really been at the top of mind for some of these offensive pairings that we've been talking about. And I'm like, am I right about this? Like, sure, Tyrese Maxey's great. Jamal Murray's great. I still probably lean them over somebody like current Jaylen Brown or something like that. But maybe I need to be a bit higher on these like forwards that are going to be a little bit more isolation heavy. So I think that's I don't want to say bias, but that's the like thought process that I'm taking into this conversation as we keep going forward with it.
Those players are hard. You think about like Jaylen Brown in Boston right now, because in real life you get the defensive benefit of not having like some leaky negative defensive player in that role, big physical player who can guard multiple positions in the playoffs and has a pedigree of that. So it's a little tricky just because we're isolating for offense for the purpose of the discussion. But I mean, I looked at like right now to pair with big men. You've got big men like Jokic, Wemby. You could even potentially include Şengün in here, although he can't really space and shoot. But like big men that can do it all. They can handle the ball. They can play at the elbow. They can score in the post. They can pass from the elbow and initiate offense. They can play role game as well. I mean, Jokic can play pop game. Wemby can pop, although he's not as good of a shooter. Those guys came up last week for a reason. So I don't know if you have off the top of your head any more thoughts on that because we went through them. But then you have Giannis and I don't know, maybe someone like Evan Mobley. They can't shoot, but they can handle the ball and they can roll. And Cody, am I crazy to say that you could run some elbow offense through Giannis Antetokounmpo? Is that a crazy idea?
I don't necessarily think it's crazy. No.
Yeah. So I think there's that. I think you've got the spacers and rollers that we've talked about, Karl Anthony Towns, Chet Holmgren. You got pure spacers like maybe Lowry Markkanen. I don't know if you want to just make a differentiation there. And then, of course, you've got guys that are great role players. I don't mean ROLE. I mean pick and roll. They can roll downhill, vertical roll threats, and they can play from the elbow. So Jalen Duren, Evan Mobley, Bam Adebayo, Ivica Zubac. Jarrett Allen, what's going on? Jarrett Allen had 40 points in a game, Cody. Yeah. 40 is the new 20.
I think that's his only 40-point game. I think we were looking this up before.
It's
not
even
like
close, right?
Or something like that.
Yeah.
And not just 40. It was like 40 and 18. Sorry, anyway.
No, I'm just saying. I think we should just acknowledge that there was a point in time in basketball history when players who weren't big scorers, if they had a big game, it was usually like a 20-point game. You could make some technical argument and be like, it was a 25-point game or a 30-point game. But 40 feels like that now, where you're just like, oh, you just turn it, you're just flipping through the highlights at the end of the night. And it's like, oh, Grayson Allen had 43 points tonight. You're like, yeah, no big deal. And the next night, Dylan Brooks had 40 points. You're like, yeah, of course. Anybody can score 40. That's how I feel.
Well, whoever had Jarrett Allen on some fantasy team was very, very excited that day. I want to talk about Evan Mobley because I have a stat right here that I'm looking at that I find interesting. And now they clearly pair him with Mitchell quite a bit. Like he's not alone on the court without him like a ton. So we're talking about 1,100 minutes that he's played with Mitchell on the court, about 300 minutes he's played without Mitchell on the court. So when he's on the court with Mitchell, right, so his points per 75 are down a little bit. He averages like 18 points per 75, about 59% true shooting. But the thing that really stands out to me is 77% of his shots are at the rim. 77% of his shots, right?
This is with Donovan, right?
That's with Mitchell being on the court with him.
Yep.
Wait, I just lied to you. Just a second. Let me try that again. He's shooting 77% at the rim.
Okay.
Yeah, he's shooting 77% at the rim. When Mitchell is off the court and Evan Mobley is on without him, his points per 75 jump up. He's like a 25 point per 75 guy. So like, oh, look at this, 8 points per game more. That's
Wait,
incredible.
Who's scoring 25 points per 75?
Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley.
Okay. Yep. For some reason, I thought we were talking about Jarrett Allen.
Oh, no. We're talking about Evan Mobley.
Okay. All right. Wow. 25. All right. Yeah.
His true shooting percentage drops from 59 to 54%. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, I wonder where a lot of this is coming from. And it is at the rim again. So 77% when Mitchell is on the court with him drops down to 65% when Mitchell is not on the court. Right. So I think you watch somebody like Evan Mobley play offense. He has the handle and he can create a little bit. And he's using his bulk a little bit more to get to the basket. I think we talked about that quite a bit more last season. But when you look at some of those numbers, maybe you're like, he still probably needs a guy that's going to be a primary. I'm going to handle in the pick and roll. I'm going to get into the paint. I'm going to set up and things like that. So I think that's an interesting one where Evan Mobley might seem like somebody that doesn't necessarily need it. And you might say, all right, give me like Kawhi Leonard or something like that. That's not going to set up teammates quite as well as somebody like a Jamal Murray. But at the end of the day, I think somebody like Mobley benefits a lot more from having a ball handling lead guard like a Mitchell, like a Jamal Murray, like a Tyrese Maxey.
That's why I put him in the elbow and roll category, where Jalen Duren, Bam Adebayo, et cetera, et cetera. What's crazy is I think Jalen Duren's stats, scoring numbers without Cade Cunningham jump up this year. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going on there. I'm trying to see, what's going to happen in the playoffs in his case, because I'm like, he's made this improvement, especially with dribble drive moves and kind of off the bounce facing up and using that space and getting downhill. But man, I mean, it's a small sample, but to jump up and be whatever he is, like a 27-point scorer with better efficiency without Cade Cunningham, it's kind of weird, or shocking maybe is a better word. So we'll see how that plays out.
I have that number in front of me, actually. So when he's on the court with Cade this season, this might leave out a game or two. I did this a couple days ago, but he's averaging 22 points per 75 on 66% true shooting when Cade is on the court. Cade goes to the bench. Now it's only like it's 200-ish minutes, right?
Right.
Jumped up to 27 points per 75 on nearly 69% true shooting. So scoring and efficiency go up. And I was trying to think of like, this is probably a lot of noise. We're not seeing a ton of minutes. I bet you that's mostly what's going on. But it's also not like he's a great roller, but not all of his scoring comes from rolls. Like you said, he loves to operate in that area where he catches at the elbow or something like that and has that great line drive to the basket and is able to score. So maybe it's somebody that actually wants to catch the ball after some kind of action and then attack, as opposed to I'm running my screen actions constantly and getting into the paint and scoring a bunch of dunks and things like that. So maybe that's part of what's happening. And so then I thought for Duren, I'm like, should he actually be with like the highest level pick and roll type of operator? Like, can he actually function better with somebody that's not necessarily a stronger passer? I'm like, maybe like a Jalen Brunson would be
a spacer,
great.
Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I was thinking with him.
Okay. All right. So based on all this, do you have big winners and losers from these last few conversations, from this exercise, essentially, where maybe you can still give me your impression of who you think the very best offensive players are in the league after Nikola Jokic and I guess Shea. I don't even know if it's fair. Steph Curry came up so many times. Yeah. Steph Curry's still an incredible offensive player, even at his age, right? So maybe after those three guys, do you have winners and losers? Do you have players who you're thinking, you have a little more clarity on being a little bit higher than I realized based on all these possible teammates or these offensive setups that they might have, or players who are a little bit lower in the same vein?
All right, so I'm going to set myself up to get in trouble, right? We're closing in an hour.
No one's listening. This is the end of the show. This is a 3-part conversation, and absolutely no one's listening. Trust me. Yes, I have the analytics right here. 0 people left.
So the point is, like, some of these guys came up in all the conversations, right? We see them. They exist really well next to other high-end talent. They exist next to other ball handling people, etc. Like Tyrese Maxey, Jamal Murray. Like, these guys came up a lot. You know who didn't come up a lot in those conversations was somebody like Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
And Luka is just an unbelievable offensive force when he is the offensive force on there. And it felt, I think we were playing around with some of the numbers, and I think there's some boosting when he's on the court with Kyrie Irving for a period of time, which again, I think was a big winner in this conversation. But next to LeBron, next to Brunson, these sorts of things, you're not seeing ceiling pushing that you see from some of these other guys. The floor, unbelievable, just like ridiculous all time. You've never seen this kind of stuff before. Not never, but very, very rarely. So how do you factor all of that in when trying to judge where somebody like Luka Doncic would land in this conversation?
I don't even know how to talk about Luka Doncic in public anymore, because listen. I have seen comments just within the last few weeks of people saying he's not even a top 10 player anymore. It's clearly he's a problem, and that the league is kind of moving past this style of play. We've seen it with Trae Young. We're seeing it with Luka. And honestly, I think there's a lot of truth in that direction of saying you can't just sit around and dominate the ball and spam pick and roll or even isolation. It takes a lot. It takes a toll on you. And it also might have an effect on your roster construction and the teammates around you, especially given how dynamic so much of today's offense is. Like, Cody, some of today's offenses are just incredible. We just talked about the Charlotte Hornets and the number of passes and actions and speed and shooting within a possession. it unlocks each teammate and each connection on the court unlocks the next one. And that's so powerful. And what I'm seeing with Luka is almost some version of Kobe's tough shot making, where it's like the league is still teed up to defend his actions and he's still scoring on them. He's like, this isn't even a good shot, but I'm going to make another step back three. And I don't know. I don't know how great that is anymore. I wouldn't go as far as the naysayers and the negative people. But on the flip side, Cody, in the exact same breath, I'll go somewhere else. I'll see a comment being like, Luka's easily top 3 in the world right now and probably number 1 or number 2. And I'm like, what? Did Nikola Jokic retire? What? Did Giannis Antetokounmpo move to Greece? What's happening? So I don't even know how to talk about him in a reasonable sense of like, one, I'm trying to figure out what it means, but 2, what the temperature is in the room, because I think people are all over the place on him right now. And I think he's clearly been, the thing you can say safely is I think he's clearly been great this year at the things he's great at. Like absolutely, just this is the 3rd straight year where we've seen this performance from him. But to the point of this conversation, if he's your only guy, right? If he's your quote unquote only offensive guy, how great is that going to be? And B, if he's paired with another skilled offensive player, I think he's got someone like Austin Reeves right now, who's a big winner for me. How good is that offense going to be? I think the offense is going to be very good. So I think Luka's in this conversation, but then you start to worry about the defense. Like if you step back from this conversation, then you still have to worry about the defensive stuff and fits with other players. And I'm kind of fascinated to think about the idea that we talked about with big men. You know, was there a big man partner that's really a good partner for him? Would he want a role player, a popper, a spacer? We know he wants a vertical threat to unlock at the rim, but does that work at a high level if he has a much more robustly skilled big man than just someone who can catch lobs? That's where my mind goes.
Well, going full circle here, going back to the Cade conversation, on one hand, like you have the assist versus the assist. Luka, like if you stacked up like true assists, like I created the Michelangelo out of this block of clay, right? Like Luka's right near the top. Like it's like Nikola Jokic. Luka might be like number 2 in the league, where it's like, oh, you sent a double to me? I guess I'll just jump up and find a layup pass right here. Or it's like, oh, look at this. The shot clock's down. I guess I'm going to step back and make this 3. So like that kind of stuff is extremely high level. But if you were to really zoom in and give him like the Cade Banchero treatment and look at a game, I think he leans the other way with some of these little things that take away from his offensive value. And that's not even speaking to the actual offensive fit next to high-end talent. So when you take all of this, I say pretty strongly, I feel confident that the 3 best offensive players, like you said, are Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Steph Curry. If you want to say Luka is number 4, great. That probably sounds reasonable, especially in terms of what he does as a high-level guy. If you want to drop him down a couple, probably I don't necessarily want to say a bottom range right now, but if you want to drop him down a few more spots and make an argument for, and I'm going to say it, somebody like Jamal Murray or something like that.
Wow.
I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to say it right here. I wouldn't argue with you.
We started that sentence with what I thought was a request for a Luka deep dive gamer, and then we ended it with some spicy Jamal Murray. I do think Jamal Murray is a winner in this conversation. I think when Jamal Murray is playing like this, he is a tremendous offensive player. He might give something back on defense like Luka, but man, this last couple months, especially when Jokic went out, the thing about Jamal is his passing is just at the best it's ever been. And for someone who had this great flow to his game and this great shot and these high-level shot-making explosive situations in the playoffs against great defenses, his decision-making was never fantastic. When he had the ball and he had to dominate the ball and reset possessions through them, Nuggets fans always had a little bit of an angst about like, are we going to end up with a fadeaway 20-footer here that we don't need? And man, his passing this year has just been by far the best it's ever been of his career. Jalen Brunson is another player I think I would put in there. We didn't mention him a ton. Austin Reeves was a big winner for me. I think Jaylen Brown's improvement, Cody, with the mid-range and the finishing and the strength, I think have made him a really interesting offensive player. One thing I thought about going through this exercise is forget defense. Jason Tatum's an incredible defender. Jaylen Brown does not have the size and the team defensive impact that he has. But offensively, like this sort of pseudo Shea offensive game that Jaylen Brown has, is this better than what we've seen from Tatum's high-level offensive game? These are some of the big takeaways for me. Cade Cunningham, great playmaking as well. And then even someone like Kevin Durant, still just with all the plug-and-play options. That's probably my reflection. Am I leaving anyone out that we talked about? We talked about Maxi and Mitchell and guys like that.
Kevin Durant's really interesting because there's just basically no rim pressure anymore. Like it's just gone.
Yeah,
like truly, his percentages. Like again, if you look at the box score, you're like, oh my god, Kevin Durant's just about as good as he's ever been. But if you watch him play, there's just no rim attacks at all. Right?
He's taking like 2 rim shots a game or something like that.
It might be like per 100 possessions. Like truly,
I have it here. It's 1.6 per 75 possessions. Yeah, that's the 11th. He's in the 11th percentile in rim attempts in the league right now.
But in terms of I'm going to pass you the ball, I think I texted you this. I've been impressed with some of his secondary passing. I've been impressed with him setting up guys, trying to experiment more with kick-aheads and stuff. But when you can't pressure the rim, you're just taking off quite a bit of what the value is off your passing game. So, I can't say he's like one of the best passers in the league, but I've been impressed with that. I don't know, like how valuable is it just to have like the 6'11" guy? It's like, all right, you're just going to take this contested shot wherever you want to be. And it's an excellent shot in the game. So I don't know. Kevin Durant's in there, but the rim stuff makes me a little more dubious.
The shot making is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's the shot making is still really, really good. What about, before we get out of here, what about someone like Karl Anthony Towns and Alperen Şengün? These big men. One is like a total shooter, attacks closeouts or bombs threes, some stuff on the interior if he has a mismatch or on the glass because of his size. And then Şengün is like one of these players we've talked about, but he can't shoot like Jokic. He goes to the post. He's not as effective with the touch and things like that. Not as great of a passer, but still a very good passer, can handle the ball. And Houston, I felt like at times this year or for a lot of the season because of Fred VanVleet's injury, has centered a lot of the offense around like literally the heliocentrism of Şengün. Like get the ball to him in the middle of the floor or near a post area and run offense that way. And that's helped them been, respectable on offense.
Yeah. And so Şengün, first of all, his synergy with Amen Thompson is one of my favorite things to watch in the league. Like they clearly love playing with each other. Thompson's like immediately like, I am cutting to the basket anytime this guy gets the ball in the middle of the court. It's just wonderful to watch. Towns is really complicated because I think he has a profile of a guy that should be super additive next to basically anyone, right? You get the spacing is definitely extremely additive. Like the trailer threes he takes is just, it's off the charts. It like blows away what you're supposed to do to defend like a 5 when he's playing the 5 position. But he's a good passer. He gets really frazzled. He still gets extremely frazzled under pressure. He gets frustrated, throws really errant passes. He has quite a developed post game as well, but that also has some kind of like empty isolation where he's not really going to create for somebody else. So I think Towns, I don't know. I think Towns is a little bit lower than I might have been on him, say like a year or two ago.
Interesting. I don't want to end the conversation without at least acknowledging the strange, weird, comebacky, I don't know what season from Joel Embiid that's going on, because he's continuing to put up bigger numbers and starting to move a little bit better and just like finding a way to play with whatever physical limitations he has. And Philadelphia's offense has been much better with him on the court when he's been able to play this year. And that's a very real thing. To support us, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. That's the best way to do it. We also have the stats board that we talked about for players and teams. You can see, the Hornets are one of the best teams in the league in the last month, things like that. Patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. Always a great way just to directly support all things Thinking Basketball. We have our extra videos there for our highest tier members and things of that nature. Cody, do you have any more basketball thoughts? We've run over time today. We've just been, what happened?
I know.
What's going on?
I was thinking I have a couple post show topics, but seeing as we're approaching an hour 10, I might save some of them for later. I actually kind of want to revisit because I realized after last week, we talked about like the movies or media or whatever else that has a great intro and goes like
I have
hard
thought,
the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
We missed a couple of really key ones, and people in comments brought up some ones that we immediately after the show were like, crap, like that's clear. Like Inglourious Bastards, for instance, is like very much near the top
what
of the
an incredible
list.
opening scene. Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of like 20 minutes to start the movie, hooks you just about as well as any movie. And then, my personal opinion is my favorite Tarantino film of the ones he's done. So that combined with the intro, that should have been an easy movie we threw out right away.
I had one that was outside of movies. It was outside of TV shows. I was very proud of myself for remembering that music is a thing that exists. Humans make sounds combinations, and we like to listen to them. I don't get to listen to as much music as I used to, because when you're like editing or watching basketball all day, it takes up a lot of the space in the room. So I realized the spirit of your question was, is there anything that like starts? I think you actually started by talking about a music album and Master of Puppets, right? And like I was thinking, okay, Dark Side of the Moon. Like I think I still remember the first time my brother played that for me, and then just the whole thing. It's like the intro song, and it's kind of like one long track, the entire album in some sense. It has that canonical feel to it. Oh, that was got to be an answer for me about things that started that way and then just kept going. And then 44 minutes later or whatever, you were in another place.
Well, these concept albums have that sort of thing, right?
Yes,
like you can have wonderful albums where like there's tons of bangers on there and it's wonderful and you got the singles, but the story of connecting it all. I've been working my way through the Tool's discography as of late, and they do the same kind of thing. Like they have a couple songs in their albums where you're like, you're never gonna throw that on just to listen to it. But in the context of like listening to the album from start to finish, just like connects it all. It's the Danny Green of the album, right? You're never going to pick them first in the fantasy draft, but at the end of the day, you kind of need like the weird sounds and like the ambiance and whatever else to connect the sort of thematic ideas that are in there. And Dark Side of the Moon is maybe the best concept album that's been released like ever.
Yeah. Well, the people want to know before we go, are you reading any other books besides the Odyssey right now? What's on the Cody? I was going to say the Cody summer reading list, but we spent a lot of the show talking about how it's January and February. So the winter reading list.
The winter reading list. I'm revisiting a book that I'm trying to go back and find the 5-star books, and I'm like, are these truly 5-star books that I marked down? So I'm reading A Visit from the Goon Squad right now by Jennifer Egan. I gave it a 5 stars a couple of years ago when I read it for the first time, and let me tell you, it's hitting just as hard this time around. It's one of those very rereadable books. It's great because it's like each chapter it doesn't follow like a single linear progression. Like each chapter connects like a character from a previous chapter. So by the time you're done with the book, you have like this giant web of these interconnected stories in a way that makes really clear thematic sense. And if I were to make like a 21st century favorite books list, it would be very, very high on that list.
If you were to make a 21st century books list, I would recognize only the books that have been made into movies on that list. Every time you mention a book, I'm like, that Cody could be making this up. I mean, who would really know? Who knows how to read a full book these days? That's absolutely incredible. All right. You got anything else?
Just quick correction. When I was saying Master of Puppets, I actually meant the song itself. Like the album, I don't necessarily think the album is perfect, but the song Master of Puppets, I think, is perfection from start to finish. And since we're speaking about Tool, I think Vicarious by them is another one of those songs. It's just perfect metal song. Just perfect.
I'm sorry. I wish I had the same metal discography knowledge that you did to go with you on these journeys, but yeah.
I'm going to have to pick your music brain a little bit more and see where we can go talking about music here, because I like music, but there's definitely a lot of genres that I'm not going to be able to hit on particularly well.
I feel like I have a very eclectic music taste, and I kind of never really wade into metal or country, although some country I like, some country can be. So you have these country has these songs that you're like, does that count as country? You know, how much does Johnny Cash get to go into the country category, stuff like that? So
it's like I think about Darius Rucker's "This" country song from like 2011. It's like, yeah, it's just Hootie and the Blowfish doing a country song. Does that count? But it's still the best country song I've ever heard.
Well, does Hootie and the Blowfish count when Darius Rucker's wearing like a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and singing with twang? Who knows? That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening all the way to the end. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, we hope you are having a great day.